Jonni, how are you, brother?
Very well, mate. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you for being here with me virtually. You're in Byron Bay. Extremely jealous. I'm in Melbourne in quite an average day, but it's amazing to be able to connect like this. Whereas, if it was in person, I'd have to come all the way up, which wouldn't
Would
be
be such a bad thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a bad excuse to be up in Byron Bay to see you. What have you been up to on this fine Wednesday?
This morning, just on lots of calls um, with people in the States who are looking for strategies to navigate all of the extraordinary challenges that are happening over there at the moment. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to go live, but as we're recording it, America is on fire, both literally and figuratively, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Everything is in a raging furnace of transformation out of what has been, a prolonged state of unsustainability. And I'm in a position of privilege to be outside of the eye of the storm, to be able to reflect objectively and provide perspective for people that are on the front line there, that are genuinely trying to provide solutions and pathways of navigating the immense complexity of the disaster that's happening in that country right now. And it's a fascinating process because, I always say, if you want to learn something, teach it. And so in the process of me providing perspective, I myself are developing a new perspective of where humanity is at and what's required of us in order to really successfully navigate the complexity of this remarkable transition that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing all morning.
Yeah, nice. It's quite an interesting time for multiple reasons of what's going on in the world, and that's where it's amazing we're not going to probably dive deep into that, but to have someone like yourself that does teach a lot on symbiosis and Vedic teachings that can bring knowledge to the world, and have teachers like yourself that are out there going, there are solutions and we can figure this out, to then adapt and then also thrive from all this stuff that happens. There are good things that will come from it, which is awesome. What are you most excited about in life?
Now, this moment, and the awareness that I have the capability to unfold the potential that is in me, that requires time and space and relationship to be expressed. I'm excited about this moment and the prospect of the future, because of my capability in the present moment. I don't fear the future. I'm excited about the future, but ultimately that excitement culminates in the experience of participating in the future unfolding right now, and creating what it is that I desire to experience for the future right now. So, and that comes in all kinds of forms. I'm building or rebuilding a house, and renovating, restoring a beautiful 110-year-old Queenslander up here in Byron Bay, and I have been for the last 12 months. And it's just such a satisfying and gratifying experience, having a vision in your mind and then making it. And the process of building is just such an extraordinary barometer for present moment awareness. How many times you measure and miscut a piece of timber is quite extraordinary, at least for me, and very revealing just of how you can bring your attention more and more into the moment and really connect with what it is you're doing. And that fluctuates. so it's really good to observe that. I run a meditation teacher training academy. We have teachers from all around the world, from all walks of life, and people are coming to this training with a desire to sincerely want to contribute to the world in a meaningful way. And it's just such a rewarding experience being able to train them in the process of teaching people how to meditate in a very elegant and effective way, and for them to take it out into the world and then watch that bear fruit, watch them create their own communities and watch awakening happening, by proxy, like, as a third party observing, is extremely rewarding. And I think the most exciting thing is, saving the best to last, is being a husband and father. I have a 2-year-old daughter and a gorgeous wife, and we made a transition from New York to Australia with the intention to make family life priority, to make wholesome living priority, as opposed to making family life a sideshow that we fit into, pursuing our passions and whatever. We just flipped the model on its head. That's what we were doing in New York, and we realized that it's not ultimately what we want. We were working really hard, and it came at a cost, but we always justified it because it was going to lead to something that we wanted. And it dawned upon us that we could actually just make that happen in a slightly varied variation of what it is that we were projecting into the future. We're like, why don't we just do it now? And, we made some sacrifices in order for that to happen. And all of those sacrifices have absolutely paid dividends in terms of, the quality of life that we live now. It's just, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
New York to Mullumbimby is like, family life, being a dad, it is probably the most fulfilling thing that has ever happened, and that is continuing to happen every day.
Amazing. And that's so much to be excited about in the present moment, where some people are like, when I ask my friends and stuff like that, I'm excited for dinner tonight. And it's like, oh, let's go big picture on these things. And I love how you included everything in it as well, and the things that are unfolding. And we're going to touch on a lot of those things because you brought up some key points in there. But for the audience that don't know much about you, and like even myself, I don't know too much about you when I come into these interviews. Well, funnily enough, we were talking about this before. I reached out to you on Instagram 2 years ago to come on the podcast, and you hadn't seen it yet. And that was okay. I think they go into another folder anyway. But for myself, you were someone that inspired me 2 years ago, and still keeping tabs on what you were doing, and One Giant Mind and meditation, something I got into and am now very passionate about myself. And I just kept hearing your name or being referred your name from friends and from other people on the podcast. And again, it just happened to be a moment where one of our mutual friends, Chantel, was like, you need to get Jonni on the podcast. And I'm like, well, if you know how, sync this up, because I've tried. And that's led to us being here. And for the audience that don't know much about you, and for myself, I do know that you're a Vedic meditation teacher and author, a speaker, and as you were saying, like a dad as well, and the founder of One Giant Mind. But can you give us a wrap up of your life from start to where you are now, and everything that you do now with that?
Have you got 10 hours?
In
like 30 seconds? Yeah. Yeah. I think to be respectful of your question, I'll have a crack, but I think there's far more interesting things about me to talk about than my journey to here. And I always say this, and maybe it's just because I don't like, talking about myself too much. I like talking about what I know and less about myself as such. I think the most interesting thing about my journey is that I have a unique quality that I was able to nurture, and it's given rise to something quite interesting. That is the most sort of dominant quality of my personality, and that is my unrelenting need, desire to know the truth about myself and about reality and about our existence, the purpose and the function of our existence. And I had the yearning to understand this from a very young age, and I haven't allowed anything to really distract me in the pursuit of understanding that. And that fire has led me into all kinds of extraordinary places to meet extraordinary people and to learn from extraordinary people who have also had that same yearning and desire and struck gold with their inquiry, and dedicated themselves to sharing that gold. And it became obvious to me at an early stage that I was able to access and integrate knowledge that satiated a yearning for knowingness, and all it did is enliven that knowingness within inside of myself, and it inspired a deep desire for me to want to share as well. It seems to be a universal principle that when our cup starts to flow over, we want to share it. And I was fortunate enough to have that experience of being exposed to knowledge that awoke a complete sense of myself, a whole sense of who I was. And I was able to bring the fragmented pieces of my ideas of who I thought I was and what I thought reality was together cohesively, where I was able to reconcile things that I wasn't reconciled with, things that had caused me pain, things that had caused me doubt or nervousness or anger or fear. And through the practice of the knowledge that I was trained in, I was able to, pull it all together quite elegantly. And the result is, a propensity to want to direct my attention into areas where there is dissonance, there is fragmentation, there is incoherence, and feed it in some way to enliven the contrary to that, to enliven coherence, unity, harmony, understanding, intelligence, progression, innovation. And that seems to just be a very natural thing that is occurring as a result of this wonderful journey, or this unrelenting is the way I describe it, this unrelenting desire to know the truth. Because the truth is in its nature coherent, unifying, enlivening, elevating, harmonizing, empowering, illuminating, all of these beautiful, powerful words that are about us moving forward with immense capability to nurture everything that is natural within us. And that's when we thrive, is when our humanity is nurtured at the very core of what we are. And that is what I refer to as the truth. What is the core of our humanity? Who are we as people? What are we as people? And what is universal about that? And how can we share in that experience? And when we're sharing in that experience, we're sharing in the truth, the light of who we are. And what comes of that is a nurturing, a nourishing of a rejuvenation of our mind and body and our experience as humans. And we feel good about it. We feel great about being alive. We feel good about our existence, as opposed to being filled with anxiety and uncertainty, which is a terrible predisposition, which most people are experiencing, particularly in these times.
Mm-hmm. So much to unpack in this. So we'll stay on that last bit when you were saying about the things that people are feeling and I guess going through, the emotions that are happening right now, the byproduct of the situations that they're going through. Is that because of a disconnect of truth?
Well, yeah, let's take the word truth, because it's a very sort of ephemeral word and it's subjective, and people can argue what truth is. Let's replace it with self.
Yep.
It is a disconnect from the experience of self. And inherent in the direct experience of self, which is, let's be very clear about what we mean by that. The experience of ourself devoid of any mental or emotional activity that is dissonant or contrary to the intent, desire, and expression to serve the greater good, to serve with a deep sense of love, with that is imbued with a choiceless sense of responsibility for the caring of all things. That's the self. That's what I define as the self. When we're disconnected from that place, then we're experiencing something other than that. And if it's something other than that, it's generally dissonant. Not generally, it's specifically dissonant. And when it's dissonant and not resonant, then we experience anxiety. We experience an uneasiness in our hearts. And that uneasiness permeates our thinking mind and creates distorted thinking patterns. Our capacity to accurately determine what's taking place in this moment is distorted. And so we mistake the moment. In our mistaking, we behave from a place of mistaking. And as a result of behaving in a mistaken way, our actions aren't met coherently and harmoniously with that which we're in relationship with. We find ourselves in conflict at worst, and at the least, uneasy and unsure and mistrusting. And this is a huge problem that we as humans face right now. And I believe that the process of establishing the experience of ourself, that is saying, establishing the direct experience of that impulse, that desire that is always there to be of service to our deepest nature, to nurture our deepest nature, and to that of everyone we come into contact with and everything we come into contact with. Because our environment, animate and inanimate, is still in relationship with us, and we have a responsibility to it. It has a nature, and its nature only flourishes when we can be harmonious with it. So, that's what I mean by truth and self. Yeah.
So what do you see is happening that makes people so disconnected from self?
It's a very complex question with many layers to it. On the surface layer, I would say that the primary reason is the legacy of ignorance, the intergenerational passing on of values and practices that either nurture the experience of self or retard and calcify one's capacity to look inward, render it, blind. Our inner eye, it becomes blind and we can't see ourselves. And there are values and behaviors and social values and cultural values that become entrenched, become the status quo, that make it difficult for individuals to step out of that, to discover themselves. And the force of the collective, the mainstream, the force and power of culture keep us contained, and it makes it very difficult, irrespective of our suffering, irrespective of our discomfort. We will still toe the cultural line. So for most people that are feeling insecure, unsafe, mistrusting, unsure of their place in the world, insecure in their belonging, when belonging is actually one of the most primary aspects of our humanity in order to feel healthy and well and to flourish, we will compromise our sensibility, our inner sensibility of what we believe is true and right in order to belong to something that is not true, just for the sake of belonging. And so in our pursuit for belonging to something that is not really truly representative of our spirit, we compromise our precious time and energy cultivating a true and lasting relationship with ourselves in order to belong to something that isn't true and lasting. And in our pursuit for wanting to belong, we become distracted and completely immersed in a reality that is trivial and toxic for our minds, our bodies, our souls. And in our illness, due to our relentless pursuit to belonging to something, the condition becomes worsened. And then we have children, and then we pass that on. We pass those values on to our children. And then they have children, we pass those values on. And it becomes an intergenerational thing, ignorance and disconnection. I believe in different points in time of human history, we have had enlightened civilizations. We've had enlightened cultures. Many of the indigenous cultures were very enlightened to their responsibility to each other and to nature. And they lived, in varying degrees, extraordinarily harmonious existences. But over time, external influences cause those bubbles to be affected and changed and dissolved. And this is, the ebb and flow of evolution of the human experience. Where we find ourselves now in history is extraordinary because we can no longer live in isolation of each other. There's no such thing as one tribe living in isolation of another tribe. Everything belongs to everything, whether we like it or not. And, what's very confronting is that what we're belonging to is a very, very dysfunctional global culture, a global collective experience, an unsustainable, dysfunctional global collective experience. And the responsibility now is to awaken as one whole thing. No small feat. It's a very big challenge that we're faced with.
So the sense of belonging that we, I guess, bend our values and bend our sensibility to then gain, would that also be on same par as acceptance?
Being accepted?
Yeah.
Yes.
Being
Acceptance
accepted.
is it? Yes, certainly. Being accepted is a mechanism of belonging. Yeah. Being accepted. I mean, ultimately, what we're aspiring to is being loved. What we desire most is to be loved fully for who we are, and to have whomever we are interacting with to see us as being relevant, significant, and of great value in their lives. That's where we get our greatest sense of fulfillment, is when actually our personal experience and our personal presence is serving another in some way to feel loved, nurtured, supported, as a support network or an energy of support that enables them to rise, and to also be the recipient of that, to be the recipient of, generous, patient, compassionate attention that sees what we are going through and is there to apply their loving attention in a way that enables us to unpick our knots in our own time and discover a deeper truth and find confidence in our own way, find our footing, and then gain momentum again. I think that's what we yearn for the most, is people that can see us. They can have patience and not judge us for where we're at, knowing that we're all inherently good, and to support and nurture that goodness, and to find confidence in that goodness. Yeah. So acceptance is a huge component in that whole unfoldment.
So the interesting thing that comes to my mind is what we were talking about before, was how we become so disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my other question was going to be, how do we become connected? And I guess you did answer that in coming back to self, of truth. Now, in that bit there that you just said of us wanting to be accepted, and knowing that some people, to feel accepted, they lose their sense of self to try and fit in, to belong,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way that people can be in alignment with that truth of self and also feel the sense of belonging?
Absolutely. I think that you only ever really feel that sense of belonging in the true sense of the word
Yeah.
when you are connected to your true self. If you're belonging to something that isn't reflective of your own spirit, you're never going to feel right. It's always going to feel uneasy. You're always going to be unsure. You're always going to be strategic in the way in which you interact in that social dynamic. And what we want to do is abandon strategy. What exhausts us, the reason why we're so fatigued, is because we're so in our heads, having to strategize to keep the wheels on the bus going round and round. And when we're in our true self, we know that our nature is intelligent, and that means I define intelligence as the ability to intuit in any given moment an appropriate response to anything that comes our way that is going to enable us to embrace that as an opportunity to exercise our capacity to love, to transform and illuminate ignorance, and to connect and nurture that connection and awaken that experience of belonging. That's what intelligence is. Anything that nurtures the experience of belonging. And so to truly belong means that you first have to belong to yourself. Mm. And when you belong to yourself, you belong. Because when you have the true experience of yourself, what you realize is that there is no disconnection. There is only ignorance of the truth. The truth is always present. The truth doesn't go away and then we rediscover it. I mean, we reignite it. The fire of the truth is always burning. It's just there. It's just that we distance ourselves from it with our attention. It's when we choose to give our attention to it. And this is why meditation is so important, is because it trains our attention to look inward, and it cultivates the propensity to stay with our inner reality, where the experience of the truth of the self, of true belonging, actually is. It's the only place that we can sense it is in ourselves. And when we can stabilize that experience, the revelation that appears is, it's always been there. Everyone always reports when they awaken to the truth of self, it's the most familiar place. Yes, because it's you. It's always been there. It's just that you've been ignoring it. And so when we have that experience, we change the word reconnect or connect to simply awaken to or notice. We just notice it. We notice that it's there. We cease ignoring it and we become it, rather than look at it as something that is objective to ourselves or separate from ourselves. We just become it. There is a merger that takes place. We become ourselves. When we become ourselves, the experience is that there is no disconnection. That paradigm ceases to exist because it's only an intellectual paradigm. It's only a bunch of ideas. When we have the experience ourselves, the ideas about who we are disappear. We don't need to uphold ideas. I am this and I am that, conceptually. We just become it. And when we become it, there is a dissolution of the ideation of ourself. They say the dissolution of the ego. I say the expansion of the ego. Ego is just a term to refer to the experience of our individual self. The ego becomes purified and expanded into a broader sense of what I am. And what I am is everything that I can connect with, everything that I can give my attention to. Because when I give my attention to it, what I notice is that there is an experience that is shared. It's universal. I belong to it. When I connect with you at this level, I realize that you and I are the same thing. We are having the same experience. We are experiencing the same desires. And when we're experiencing these same desires, in the moment, we can have an abstract experience that we will both look at each other and go, yeah, it's the same one thing, right? And it can't be accurately articulated in a way that someone that's not experiencing it might understand it. It can only be experienced when we allow ourselves to open up to it and seek it out in other and create as an art form opportunity for it to occur. And what it reveals is that belonging it's our nature. You can't take belonging away. We just ignore it. And therefore, belonging is our social responsibility. Nurturing belonging, awakening belonging, noticing belonging, the truth that is always there. We can't separate ourselves from that reality. We can only pretend that we are, and look what it creates. Look at the world we're living in. It's because of this one single thing, that we choose to ignore our belonging. Why? Is what you were getting at. Because the place where our belonging is experienced is in the same place that we hold the feelings of the trauma of our past. It's very painful to sit in that place if we haven't addressed the unresolved past. And so we avoid going back into the past and compromise our ability to know ourselves. And so we seek to find ourselves outside of ourselves because going inward is too painful.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, fortunately, a contingent of the human population that cannot ignore, irrespective of the level of pain that they feel, the calling of their soul, the calling of their spirit inward, and are willing to face the noise, are willing to face the pain. They're willing to sit in the fire and be purified by feeling the past with the wisdom of the present moment. To sit in the fire of pain and allow the wisdom of now, which is, that was something of the past, it has nothing to do with now. I release you, and I'm going to allow the truth of who I am now to flourish in this moment. And there are people that are doing that work all day, every day, for the purpose of liberating themselves, for the purpose of being a force of liberation in the presence of others, to awaken and inspire that experience in others. And this is, in my opinion, the most important thing that people who are awake can do right now, to really just take that to the next level.
So that belonging is that you're longing to just be, to be
Yeah.
your true expression, to be
Yes.
the truth of who you're here to be
Mm-hmm.
in
Yep.
the world. And I think one thing that if someone's listening and they're sitting there, because as we're saying before, you were saying that it's freeing. It's, you feel harmonious, you feel lighter because there's no heaviness of any untruth, something that's a lie that you're confining to. If someone's sitting there and they don't feel light, they don't feel free, they don't feel that sense of truth in who they are, or they haven't found that awakening, how can they start those steps to get to their awakening?
If they're actually asking that question, there is a flame, right? If they're even inquiring, how can I feel free? Then there is a recognition that they're trapped by something and that there is a yearning for freedom. There is a distinction between the two states, suffering and liberation, right? This is a wonderful starting place. And all we need to do now is fan the flame of the desire to be free. And we ask ourselves the question, to what extent is my imprisonment of my own making? What choices am I making on a day-to-day basis that are keeping me trapped in a cycle of undesirable, unfulfilling, ungratifying experiences? And what can I do to start the process of dismantling that infrastructure to knock down walls, to create greater space in my inner world. And my recommendation always as a first protocol is to learn to meditate, make it a daily habit, twice a day. The mechanics of that practice actually change the physiological structure of our brain, our nervous system, our cells, our DNA, to enable a broader spectrum of experiences to occur, to be recognizable in our awareness. What we want to do is increase our perceptual capability. That is to say, to increase the repertoire of experiences that we are having in response to external stimulation. And in doing so, what we do is establish the capacity to witness what's happening. When we're not just experiencing the same reactive state over and over again, we're noticing that there is choice. When we notice that there is choice, what we're noticing is that there is awareness there that is able to observe the moment playing out. Choice is born of awareness. When awareness is there, we have significantly increased the size of the flame of the desire of awakening. And we keep fanning it, we keep fanning it, we keep exercising the witness, we keep experimenting with deliberately making choices, irrespective of our physiological reactions to things. We have emotional, physical reactions to things. When we make a choice, no, I'm angry right now, but I'm just going to breathe into my belly, take a moment, and consider the outcome that I desire. And then, irrespective of the chemistry that's charging through my body right now and telling me to smash something, I'm going to rewrite the script. I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to see what happens. And so we begin in this way of just experimenting and seeing what choice can do to the outcomes of my life. Choosing something that is correlating with my deepest desire. When I make a choice that is in alignment with what I desire, what does it yield? Is it a more desirable life? More enjoyable life? The answer is always yes. We're not going to choose to do things that are going to do us harm if we are aware that we have a choice to do things that are going to liberate us. So
it starts with the awakening of that, and then you see the choices, you see
yes.
the story playing out and being able to step that awareness back to have choice in those.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the sequence. And meditation is just a really powerful way of fanning that flame. Getting the little flame into, something you could cook a meal on.
And where did meditation start for you? When did you first discover meditation, do meditation, to then lead into becoming a meditation teacher and having a meditation company?
Yeah. Formally, it started in my late teens. Informally, when I was about 7, I would spontaneously practice certain deliberate direction of my attention for alleviating anxiety and other sensations that I was experiencing. And this was quite spontaneous. And I certainly didn't conceptualize it to the extent that I would say I meditated. It was just a calming exercise that I did that I later learned was a very specific set of techniques that are taught traditionally. So it was an intuitive thing, which, again, just reinforces this idea that we have the knowledge inside of ourselves intuitively. All of this knowledge exists within us. I wasn't taught it as such. And so it was discovered. And also it reinforced the idea that creating coherence and harmony inside of ourselves amidst the turbulence is also a very natural thing for us to do. And so as I continued doing that through my teens, what I noticed was the benefit that practicing this quite intuitively and spontaneously, it created an enormous amount of self-awareness that was disproportionate to everyone around me, which came with its challenges because, I was having a unique experience that I wasn't able to articulate very artfully. And as a result, I would often say things about people that I had insights about that were inappropriate, uninvited, and generally very accurate. But when you say things that are very accurate about people, when it's uninvited, it's often met with, fierce defense and attack. And so I learned pretty quickly, could have probably been quicker, but that I needed to somehow develop, finesse this whole thing, and also my relationship with myself. I could see things about myself that I didn't like, or I noticed things about myself that I didn't like, and didn't necessarily have all of the tools to make the changes that I was desiring, and would give myself a hard time about it. So I was essentially projecting my own standards of myself onto others. And it was important that I learned how to, be more elegant and sophisticated with the whole process. And fortunately, a series of events led me to India, where I was able to formalize a learning process of what was naturally taking place inside of me, learn practices that continued that awakening process. And it just naturally progressed to a point where it was so obvious to me that there was nothing else that I needed to be doing with my time. Yeah. And so I just made a full-time commitment to this. And it's been a wonderful time because of it. I live a very, very wonderful, fortunate life because of the choice that I made.
And would you say that choice was coming from a place of truth and you being in your true form?
Yeah. And if I was to be, really accurate, I would say that I was choiceless. It was when I was just completely surrendering to the truth of what it is my heart desired to be expressive of. It was just saying, this is it. There's nothing else for you to do. Everything else that you're doing is kind of not in alignment with this deepest truth. And you need to just let go and dive in. And so I did. And, almost immediately it yielded the desired outcome.
So would you say that's kind of the process of finding this purpose that everyone's searching for?
Listening to your heart?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Our purpose is intrinsic to our existence. It's not something that we choose. It's something that we are. We are purpose-filled creatures. The very nature of our existence is purposeful. We serve a function in nature. And it's only when we are disconnected from that purpose that we trivialize the principle of purpose. We trivialize it, and we can feel like we could take it or leave it. This is a great mistake of our understanding of our nature. Embodied in the truth of our deepest nature, what we realize is that our purpose is to serve the flourishing, the fulfillment of our collective desire to progress together in a shared experience of insight, understanding who we are and what we are in the universe, and what our capability is move in that direction together, serving the diversity as well. This is not about homogenizing in any way, becoming one similar looking, sounding, appearing, behaving thing. It is inclusive of an extraordinary diversity that is absolutely paramount to our flourishing. So yes, it starts with obeying the subtle impulses of intuition that are always there, steadily flowing as a gentle stream through our inner world, if only we would just listen. And sometimes our emotions are abrasive and abrupt and turbulent, and it makes it difficult for us to detect the subtlety of the voice of our intuition and our impulse to serve. And so meditation is an important part of refining our senses to detect this. Meditation sharpens, refines the instruments of our senses so that we can sustain relationship with that deep, quiet place, and for that awareness of what it is that we are and how we wish to express to always be present and never be overshadowed by the abrasiveness of external stimulation, the coarseness of it that can cause us to become blunt and dull.
So to connect back into that purpose, to feel fulfilled, that sense of belonging, it's going back to the truth of what's within us, our being, our heart, and also that sense of service to the world.
Exactly. Beautifully said.
What is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, and how is that the best thing that has ever happened to you?
Yeah, well, I think I can only really answer the second part of the question. I mean, just the nature of my perspective is that I don't really see anything bad has happened to me. You know, there are certainly experiences that caused trauma in my nervous system that I have since recovered from, by and large, mostly recovered from, sufficiently recovered from to the extent that I don't lose sight of the truth. Let's put it that way. And those events served as the catalyst for inquiry, because we humans seem not to prospectively want to move into the fire until we have a muddy boot pushing us in there. You know, where we're choiceless, we're forced by crisis to confront what is no longer sustainable. In my case, it was the ignorance of the truth of who I was. There was a degree of suffering that was occurring that just made me absolutely intolerant of it. And as a result, became unrelenting in my pursuit to know the truth. I always had an intuitive sense that suffering was eminently conquerable. I could conquer it. I could overcome it. I could dissolve it. I could free myself of it. I could rid myself of it. And my intuition was right. And so all of the events that have happened in my life that, you know, one would classify as like, ooh, you know, all the oofs have served as the greatest instruments or opportunities to crack me open ever deeper and to see the truth of who I am. All circumstances that in the tradition that I teach are referred to as karma, the intelligence of nature orchestrating circumstance that is a part of a conspiracy to my enlightenment. You know, the universe is conspiring to our enlightenment. It's a non-punitive universe from my perspective, from where I'm standing and how I see it. It is only ever conspiring to awakening. And fortunately I was able to take those cues in a timely manner so that the suffering and the ongoing so the circumstances that were presented to me were, minimalized. It's like, okay, I got the lesson. Thank you. You can now take that muddy boot off my head and let me breathe for a second. I got it. I let go. So yeah, sorry to not be able to give you some juicy event, but to be really true to me and who I am and how I'm experiencing things, my answer to that is that the worst is the best.
Mm-hmm.
The worst has been the best for me.
Mm-hmm.
I bow in reverence to my adversity.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that it was an interesting part in there about that they all took you to a place of inquiry, and forcefully sometimes, like some things, even I know in my life, like it's happened and it's like you have to now look within, because what's happening outside, these situations are putting you there to go within. And if you don't, you're just going to keep ignoring, whether it's the flame or ignoring the truth of who I am and what I was experiencing. I think that's very relevant right now, especially when the world went into isolation. It was a forceful inquiry on, do I like the life I'm living? Why am I doing the things I do? Why am I in the routines that I'm normally in? Why don't I like spending time with the people in the house or in the walls that I'm in? And it's allowing people to gain that awareness of who they want to be and what they're doing.
Yeah, that it's been an extraordinary thing. I've referred to as an enforced retreat. Nature's like, all right, everybody, time out. We're all just going to go inside and sit still for a minute and just reflect on what's going on here. And people have done that in varying degrees. And the ones that have really taken the time have seen this as an opportunity to create the kind of change in their life that they not only need for themselves, but the world needs. And it seems like this this remarkable global event is going to be overshadowed by something else that's creeping out of the shadows right now that we're seeing. We're in early days of. We thought the pandemic was an event. I think there's something else lurking out of the shadows right now. And my perspective on all of that is that it is a good sign that we are getting to the heart of things when the monsters that lurk beneath the shadows of our ignorance and our delusions actually come out. When the monsters reveal themselves, it means that we are threatening their existence. And this is a good sign that the light is becoming so bright that they can no longer stay the monsters. And when I'm talking about the monsters, I'm talking about the unresolved past that we carry around, and the fragmentation that causes inside of ourselves as humans. These demons or skeletons in the closet, they're coming out, and it's like the last stand to try and defend their territory, the shadow. But in the light, there is very little shadow to hide in. If it's 12 o'clock sun, straight up, straight down. And so, if things look a little hairy and dark in the world, know that, the darkest hour of the evening is just before the sun rises. And, we as humans in our awakening are going to have to witness some upheaval and some turmoil. And it's okay. It's really okay. And all we need to do, for those that feel the truth and the resonance of my words and in your words, Carlo, and they reflect the words that you all speak, just stay true to that. Stay true to that. Keep nurturing that fire. Keep staying still within yourself, non-reactive. Be discerning. Don't buy into the drama, but be respectful of those that are entrenched in the drama. Be compassionate. Be kind. because we're all at different phases of our interpretation of what's happening on the planet right now. And we need to just gently be as inclusive as is possible, but not abandon our post. Don't abandon your post. Don't abandon yourself. Stay true to your own sensibility, your own sense of conscience of what is right, and just live in accordance with that. And that over time is going to be the very foundation in which many others are going to be able to pull themselves out of a dark place and see the light.
I love that.
Mm.
What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Let go. Let go. Let go of anything that is held onto based on a belief that I cannot trust this moment fully, and that I cannot trust the intelligence that animates all life in the universe to continue conspiring to my most evolutionary, my most fulfilling whole experience. Let go of anything that is resisting the natural flow of events, and just, as if in a river, a torrenting river, allow the stream to take you and detect opportunity to grow. Let go, let go, let go. Surrender. That's the best advice I've ever been given. Yeah. And this is the foundation of meditation as well. What we're doing is we're letting go into ourselves, falling back into what we are. Because when we let go, what are we doing? We're falling into ourselves. We're falling into the truth. People are so afraid to let go of all of these things they're holding on to so dearly, because they don't yet know that just beneath the surface is the vast reservoir, infinitely vast reservoir of kind, loving intelligence. That is the very nature of what we are. It's just there. Let go, fall into it. Allow it to acquire you fully, like an ocean acquires a drop of the ocean. When the drop falls into the ocean, the drop is no longer detectable. The drop has become the ocean. We as human beings, and this is not a romantic, poetic little spiel I'm making. I'm speaking very literally. There is an experience that we can have if we let go of feeling like we belong to the fabric of existence. We belong as if a part of an infinitely vast ocean. We can identify the sense of self with a vast expanse that is lively with creative intelligence, seeking to nurture itself. And that's where that advice led me to. And that's why it's such good advice.
So what advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Let go. Actually, at 16, you're doing great. Everything's going to be fine. Keep doing what you're doing. And maybe just let go. Let go, let go. Let go.
I love it.
I'd be encouraging to my 16-year-old self, because there were some really wonderful things happening at that age. And yeah, it was a great time. It was a confusing time for sure. But I knew that I was going to work it out. I had a strong sense that I was going to work it out. And so I wouldn't want to interfere with that process, because that process of working it out is my story, and it gives me the content from my teaching. You know, it's only our own personal experience that fills our bucket content, to share. It makes us relatable. It's what makes the wisdom integratable, relatable, human. Yeah, I wouldn't want to rob myself of my own story. I wouldn't want to change it too much, because that unfolding process was perfect, really perfect. As painful and as clunky as it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Keep going. Good on you, mate. That's what I'd say. Yeah. Give myself a big hug.
Love that. As you said there, everything kind of perfectly unfolded, and we did you touched on this a while ago in the conversation, was the mistakes. Would you say that there is no mistakes on our journey?
No, I would say that there are mistakes. If we're framing it from the perspective of, is that an accurate take of reality, or is that born of a delusion? We need to be able to distinguish the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. This is a big part of the journey, in fact, is learning how to distinguish the difference between a delusion, which keeps us trapped in a cycle of dysfunction and dissatisfaction, and the difference between a perspective that liberates us from that cycle, expands our repertoire of responses to life's challenges, and enables us to experiment, explore different ways of being and doing things that are expressive of who we truly are. When we're expressive of who we truly are, then we're free. When we're not expressive of who we truly are, we're trapped. And what traps us is a mistake of our perspective. The mistake, and that mistake might be the mistake of our true power, of our lovability, of our deservingness for freedom, of our power and significance, the relevance and significance of our influence, the need for us in the world. We mistake all of these things. We've been deeply indoctrinated into delusions of unworthiness, of powerlessness, the belief that we don't have a responsibility to serve the greater good. It's not our problem, it's their problem. The world's problems are too big for me. All of these kinds of delusions are the thing that keep us trapped. So it is a mistake to believe those things. And those mistakes are the difference between somebody awakening and becoming liberated and very powerful in the world, or not. And so we need to distinguish the difference between mistakes. And it's important to call out our own mistakes, but to be very kind and gentle and playful in the recognition of these mistakes. And it's what we don't want to do is become a failure in discovering our mistakes and ignoring the knowledge that we gain from the discovery. Continuing to ignore what we know is a problem that we need to face, and it's one that most people struggle with. Mm-hmm. But there's no absolute mistake. There is no absolute failure. We are in a procession of awakening, and the awakening is happening whether we like it or not. We're in it. It's happening. The unfolding is happening, and it is super clunky, and we can get very identified with the small picture, our own personal narrative, and impose all kinds of stories over our experience of unfolding. And some of that can be that we are a failure and that we are making mistakes, and we have wrecked some opportunity or something like that. And these are in fact a mistake. Because there's no last chance mentality. The universe, if we wipe ourselves out, the universe will continue to exist. The benevolent intelligence that funds the whole enterprise of the universe, of existence, is not created nor destroyed. It is, and it will continue to be, irrespective of what choices we make as a collective, and what happens to us as a species. So everything's okay. If the entire universe was dependent on our awakening, then that would be a different story. Thankfully, it's not. It's so in that respect, we can lighten up. We can lighten up. We need to lighten up, because that's what frees that creativity. That's what frees our ability to innovate and connect with that place that enables us to come up with all the wonderful solutions to all the challenges that we're facing right now. We need to be more playful, even in the midst of, great stress and pressure and violence and challenges. That's our challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But for the human spirit to flourish amidst the noise and haste, it's a great challenge.
My final question is...
All great questions, by the way.
Thank you very much. What does it mean to be conscious?
It means to be fully alive. To be conscious, the word consciousness and life are synonymous, one and same thing. What does it mean to be alive? It means to be conscious. The only way that we know we are alive is through the means of consciousness. How do we know we exist? Consciousness. The abstract phenomenon of reflecting on existence. What an extraordinary thing. And so consciousness is everything. Without it, there is nothing. Without consciousness, there is no awareness of existence. Therefore, there is no existence. And so consciousness is the foundation in which we transact on every level. And it is sacred. Our consciousness is sacred. And we, as a matter of urgency, must find within ourselves rituals to sanctify the sacredness of our existence. That is to say, to sanctify the experience of being aware. Sanctify that which we are aware of. Hold sacred the magnificence of life. And ritualize it. Celebrate it. Because therein lies the seed of our liberation. If you can behold in your heart truthfully and feel the ramifications of being alive fully in every moment, you are free. Because the truth is, life is sacred. Our existence is sacred. And to know the sacredness enlivens all our greatest qualities. We become enlivened by the desire to want to nurture that sacredness, to love it, to be a part of it, to sing along with it, to be in harmony with it, to never be apart from it, to never damage it, never hurt it, never harm it. That's the revelation when we behold the sacredness of life. And how do we have that experience? Through consciousness. Consciousness is all there is. That's all there is. This is a game of just increasing that. Increase awareness to realize that all there is awareness. Aware of awareness. It's an extraordinary thing and the most noble pursuit.
Consciousness is... Oh, what did you say just before? Consciousness is... Oh, wait, it just slipped my mind. You just said it. Consciousness is everything? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Conscious Podcast is everything. And
there you go.
Cheeky plug on the name. But Jonni, it's been incredible. This has been such a beautiful awakening conversation. I'm so grateful for your time, for your wisdom, and for sharing so much with myself, but also with everyone that's listening to this. I've loved hearing about your journey, but also the wisdom that you've gained along the way, but you're also sharing out there so willingly in alignment with your truth. That's also awakening other people's truth through inquiry, through information as well. So thank you so much for all of this.
Well, thank you, mate. Being able to talk to you means that I'm able to fulfill what I'm here to do. So, without you, I'm just chopping wood.
And measuring 3
You're
times.
measuring 3 times and still cutting incorrectly.
I love it. Where can people follow your journey, see more about you and One Giant Mind?
You can go to onegiantmind.com if you want to start a meditation practice and you don't know of a teacher around you. We have a free app that will teach you in 12 simple steps how to practice a wonderful technique that you can practice every day. My encouragement is to find a teacher of the One Giant Mind technique or a Vedic meditation teacher. They will teach you a really elegant technique that will enable you to make meditation a daily habit very easily. We are about to open up a studio in Mullumbimby in our home, actually. And it's going to be a very, very potent place of intense learning for anybody who really wants to take things to the next level. We're calling this the studio Ritam Pacific. We haven't launched yet. It was delayed because of the COVID situation. And we're looking forward to announcing when the doors are both our physical doors and our virtual doors, because we're going to have online programming as well. Or you can just, catch me on the street walking down to the local bakery every morning in Mullumbimby. You'll see me there and my little girl, Safira, walking down the street, munching on our croissants or other such delightful baked treats.
I love it, and sounds very exciting. So if you guys are listening or watching on YouTube, if anything has triggered you, inspired you, awakened something within you, make sure you screenshot that, share it, let us know. We do want to hear feedback on this. And we want to know if something that we are saying or sharing in this conversation has sparked something within you, or maybe allowed you to see that spark and fan those flames a little bit more. So until next time, everyone, and Jonni, until we meet in person, take care.
Looking forward to that, Carlo. Yeah.
Peace.
See you, buddy.